This week on Jerusalem Dateline, despite an official ceasefire in northeast Syria, the fighting continues and many Christians and Kurds are caught in the crossfire. Plus, reports that jihadists are stealing Christians' lands.
Christians and Kurds are gone. They can't stay. They will die. Those that have stayed will die.
There is no ceasefire.
Plus, Daniel, South Africans bring the Bible to life in a spectacular performance, a gift to bless the Jewish state, seen for the first time in Jerusalem. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. The Turkish invasion of northeast Syria began on October 9th. Many believe there's a ceasefire between the Turkish army, its jihadist allies, and the Syrian Democratic Forces, and that all is well. But the people on the ground are telling a different story. On the front lines, a small Christian relief group is reporting the ceasefire is in name only.
We were hit pretty hard today. There was Turkish armor or Turkish painted armor, 3 armored vehicles, multiple infantry, many wounded. We got in the back here. Team is treating them. Lord help make it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Dave Eubank and his Free Burma Rangers have been rescuing the wounded and helping those caught up in the fighting.
That mortar just hit right here.
He says the Turkish army, along with its jihadist allies, are continuing the attack.
Right now, the only safe zone that there is the international border between Turkey and Syria. The other zone is a genocide zone. Christians and Kurds are gone. They can't stay. They will die. Those that have stayed will die.
There is no ceasefire.
Dalton Thomas told CBN's Ben Kennedy on Faith Nation there's 2 safe zones inside Syria.
One for ethnic and religious minorities, protected by the Kurds, and one for ISIS, protected by Turkey. And the one safe zone was exposed yesterday with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi being killed, and now we're seeing how far this conspiracy is actually going to go.
Al-Baghdadi's safe house sat in a Turkish protected area. Thomas and a number of others suspect Turkey shielded him. On Monday, Israel's ambassador to the UN called out Turkey's President Erdogan.
For years, he has been destabilizing the region through violence and supporting terror organizations. Erdogan is a threat to regional stability, to Turkey's neighbors, and to the Turkish democracy.
After Baghdadi's death, Thomas sees a greater threat.
The Middle East is much more dangerous now than it was even with his death, because we're seeing the rise of the true Islamic State, which is the state of Turkey.
Recently, Turkey's defense minister posted a future map of Turkey that included parts of Syria, Iraq, and Greece. In the midst of the crisis, Eubank and Thomas are praying for the U.S. and the international community.
But I'm praying that our country changes. And not only is guarding oil fields, which are important, but even more important are people. That's why you have oil, for people. And it's their oil. So we need to bring our troops back and draw a new line.
My prayer would be that the international community would wake up to what's actually happening and engage to stop it, because we're running out of time.
As the fighting continues, many Christians caught in the crossfire are paying the price. These jihadist troops fighting for Turkey just captured the Syrian town of Ras Ain that had a large Christian population. Bassam Ishaq is the U.S. representative of the Syrian Democratic Council that represents a new democratic government in northeast Syria that speaks for all the peoples and minorities in that region. He told CBN's Faith Nation the jihadists stole the Christians' land.
They were told by the pro-Turkey rebels that they have orders not to kill the Christians, but you have no land here anymore. So they're not able to go and collect their harvest. And what this amounts to is really soft ethnic cleansing. Because if you lose your source of income, you lose your land, you leave. And so this is what the pro-Turkey jihadis are doing.
Those same jihadist forces are now on their way to the next town with a large Christian population, Tel Tamer.
We have, similar to ISIS, the same mindset as ISIS, those pro-Turkey jihadis who are coming in now threatening their town. We need the U.S. to step in.
On Tuesday, the U.S. House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to sanction Turkey and sent the resolution to the Senate. Senator Lindsey Graham told CBN News they need to stop Turkish President Recep Erdogan.
I think these sanctions are necessary to make sure that Turkey does not ethnically cleanse Syria of Kurds. This is their ancestral home. They've been great allies to our brothers and sisters in the Christian faith. They helped us defeat ISIS, and we cannot sit on the sidelines and watch Turkey ethnically cleanse part of Syria from Kurds.
Retired Marine Captain Brandon Wheeler says the threat by these jihadist forces to Syrian Kurds and Christians represents a threat to the U.S.
A threat to freedom anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere. And if you can't secure freedom here, you will be sure that people who want to kill Americans, who have killed Americans, will come here in order to man, train, equip, and prepare for the next war because they are committed.
As we've seen, the fighting on the ground is ongoing in Syria, and the humanitarian crisis created by the Turkish invasion there continues to grow. Chuck Holton shows how CBN's Operation Blessing is working to help those with no place to go.
While the American withdrawal led to greater Russian and Turkish influence in Syria, aid workers on the ground say there is no ceasefire. Retired Marine Captain Brandon Wheeler has spent years getting to know the players in this region. He says the U.S. gave up a huge opportunity in northern Syria.
The fascism of Islamic fascism and the totalitarianism of Russia and Assad, those things are not going to be better ideas to freedom and self-government. It just won't work. So if you had played it out, and if we had done what we did post-World War II and built this place up, everybody in the area would want to be here. It'd be the most prosperous, successful place in the whole region. All of that may be lost.
Now the other players are rushing in to fill the power vacuum left by the U.S. exit.
What I can tell you for sure is whether it's Putin or Assad or the Salafi Islamists or Turkey, the one thing they can all agree on is that self-governance, individual freedom is a threat to all of them. So they will exterminate this project at all costs.
Dave Eubank has been leading a small team of medics in northern Syria since mid-October, and he believes the U.S. still has a role to play.
This was an emergent, small democracy of a mixed ethnic religious group that got along with each other. But they needed us in the middle to help hold that together and to keep ISIS down. These people fought and defeated ISIS here, but to keep them from rising again, the U.S. needs to stay. Also, to stop Assad and his dictatorship to taking over this whole country.
Despite the supposed ceasefire, Turkish-backed forces are still killing Kurds in this area.
Imagine what it would be like if every time you heard an airplane go overhead, you had to worry about your car or your house vaporizing. That's what the people here in northern Syria are worried about now because of the ever-present threat of Turkish drones flying overhead. And it's changing the way they live. So, for example, we park our car underneath the trees if we need to because we try not to be too visible from the air.
This Kurdish soldier says he hopes the world will understand that they're fighting not just for themselves.
We could die at any time here from airstrike, from a drone, from artillery. But the most important thing for us is that the world sees that we are standing up against this tyranny from Erdogan.
For these men, the U.S. involvement here is important not just for the Kurds, but for America as well.
The U.S. cannot solve the problems of Syria or anywhere else, but right here, we create a space where the Kurds and the Arabs, the Christians and the Yazidis and others can work something out, and they were. There's no guarantee it'll work, but guaranteed it will fail if you leave.
A threat to freedom anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere. And if you can't secure freedom here, you will be sure that people who want to kill Americans, who have killed Americans, will come here in order to man, train, equip, and prepare for the next war because they are committed.
From northern Syria, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Coming up, weaponizing the United Nations, how the Obama administration used the UN to pressure the Jewish state. Exerting political pressure against Israel and using the United Nations as a weapon. A senior advisor to former President Barack Obama recently admitted how the administration used that tactic just before leaving the White House. And the Jewish state could likely face similar challenges in the near future. Leverage against Israel. That strategy was on display recently at Washington's powerful J Street Conference. The group claims to be pro-Israel, but often criticizes the Jewish state. Obama National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes proudly admitted how the administration used the United Nations to pressure Israel.
And at the end of the very end of the administration, we abstained on a resolution essentially critiquing Israeli settlement construction along the same lines as what we would say in our own words.
About a month before Obama left office, the U.S. abstained during a vote at the UN Security Council, allowing the passage of an anti-Israel resolution against settlements in biblical Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank. While the U.S. historically opposed settlements, it had always backed its key ally at the UN. It led to calls of betrayal.
The United States could have killed this resolution by voting no. This was a stab in the back against the Israelis.
Some, including Middle East expert Michael Widlansky, saw it coming.
It's not a surprise that the Obama administration would pressure Israel, because the only consistent point about the Obama administration in all its foreign policy was hurting Israel and helping Muslim extremists, whether it's Turkey's Erdogan, whether it's the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, or the crazy Ayatollahs in Iran.
And that strategy could potentially resurface. During the J Street event, 2020 presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders said the U.S. should use its Israeli military aid as a Middle East bargaining chip.
My solution is to say to Israel, you get $3.8 billion every single year. All right? If you want military aid, you're going to have to fundamentally change your relationship to the people of Gaza. In fact, I think it is fair to say that some of that $3.8 billion should go right now into humanitarian aid.
Less than 2 years after Israel left Gaza, Hamas took over in a violent coup. The terror group has used millions in international aid to help its fire rockets, build tunnels, and launch riots against Israel's border. Widlansky says those who call themselves friends of Israel often turn on the Jewish state.
The best way to deal with deceivers, masqueraders, is to unmask them. Strip their mask, show who they really are, embarrass them. That's the only way to defeat them.
Up next, how one humanitarian group is helping Christians, Yazidis, and minorities in the war zone and getting their message to the world. Charmaine Heading is the founder of the Shy Fund, a nonprofit organization that provides humanitarian aid and disaster relief for people in need. Heading has been helping the people of northeast Syria for years, and I talked with Heading about the crisis in northeast Syria and what the world needs to know. Charmaine, thanks for joining us here on Jerusalem Dateline.
It's always an honor to be here, Chris.
Yeah. We have two maps here right now, and talk about the land that a lot of people are referring to, but as you say, tell us what this land actually is.
So this is North Syria, and this is the area that's been proposed as the buffer zone where you have the red. And where you have all the purple dots are all the ancient Christian villages, people who speak Aramaic, the same language Jesus spoke. They all live along this so-called buffer zone.
So the conventional wisdom is this is all Kurdish land, this is YPG, but you're saying this goes back 2,000 years of Christians living in this land.
They predate Islam by 7 centuries here. This is their ancient homeland. In fact, many of these Christians, even worse, are survivors of the 1915 Armenian genocide that were put on the first death marches from Turkey into this area of Syria. These are Christian lands. It's also Kurdish lands. It's also Arab tribes, and there's also Yazidis that live here. This is not just a Kurdish area.
Right now, we're talking about danger for Christians that are right now in the line of fire. We're talking about Tel Tamar right here. Yeah. Tell us what's going on right now.
So as you can see, Tel Tamar area is way outside the so-called agreed buffer zone. So the question we're all asking is, how come Turkey is allowed to bring their jihadi troops in the so-called national army, which is made up of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, FSA, and other ideological radicalized Islamist groups, into this area where there's been well-documented human rights abuses against minorities or religious minorities like the Christians and the Yazidis, or what the Turks are calling all over social media infidels, you and me.
So we're having ethnic cleansing here. The House of Representatives in the U.S. just voted to recognize the Armenian genocide. What's happening right now?
It's kind of hypocritical to recognize the Armenian genocide that's happened when you've got Assyrians, Armenians, and Christians that are living all along here, and they are running for their lives right now as we are sitting here today, because these Turkish armies are attacking them and are coming into this area in order to ethnically cleanse the area of all of the so-called infidels.
You see there's a historical parallel to what's happening right now. What is that?
I think that what we have done as the West is that we have given over this so-called buffer zone to Turkey in the hope for peace in our time, just like Chamberlain did to Nazi Germany with the Sudetenland. And we know what happened after that. 6 million Jews died. And we are looking at the same thing happening, another genocide of Christians, Kurds, and Yazidis in this area. We have lost the moral clarity.
And quickly, Charmaine, what can be done?
We need to stop Turkey from flying into this area. America controls the skies. We need to declare a no-fly zone. We need to move troops into this area and protect the religious minorities. For those of us who say never again, not on our watch. It's happening. We have to call. This is the time to make a call and to say to our leaders, our people in authority, protect our Christians, protect the Kurds, protect the people in these lands.
Well, Charmaine, thanks for your expertise and your insight and your passion about the people here. Thank you. Still ahead, the Bible comes to life when South Africans bring a spectacular production of Daniel as a gift to bless the Jewish state. Imagine Christians from South Africa, the home of the BDS movement, blessing Israel with a biblical musical. That's happened recently with the performance of a Broadway-style musical based on the book of Daniel. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
They call Daniel the musical a gift of friendship from South Africa with love.
The whole musical was created for the purpose of bringing it to Jerusalem. Part of the message that we've brought from South Africa is that the vast majority of South Africans are people that relate with Judeo-Christian values, more than 80%. And that's not reflected in our government's policy.
Creator and producer Joe Neiman says South Africa's stance against Israel isn't good for his country and hopes this gift can begin to change that.
When God promised Abraham that he would bless those that bless Israel, that is the word of God. So for us it's not political, it's about believing the word of the God of Israel and taking him on it.
The musical, performed at the Jerusalem Theater, aims to blend the biblical story of Daniel and his three friends from Jerusalem with an African style.
In the compositions, there are flavors of Middle Eastern harmony, but the arrangements are African. And that became the bridge between South Africa and Israel and the musical concept.
It opens just before the Babylonians breach the walls of Jerusalem and capture Daniel and his friends. We meet King Nebuchadnezzar and his wife. The captive's introduction to Babylon. And Daniel interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Neiman wrote the musical in less than 6 months, miraculously found a theater on short notice, and began rehearsals.
I almost feel like I'm dreaming, you know. It's been such a compressed time and with so many incredible miracles that needed to happen, and it's happened.
And what did the audience think?
It was full of life, Certainly the spirit of the Bible and the actors came through so wonderfully. And what's amazing to me is the miracle that it was put together so fast. How you rehearse something and bring it together so quickly is beyond belief.
I live in Israel where my family made Aliyah. And just like God connects us all, and it was just an amazing performance on the show that like really got to me.
Just amazing to see the African spirit transmitted into a biblical play like this was truly amazing, and it was very emotional and very heartwarming to see the support that there is for Israel.
The musical was clearly a gift well received, and producers hope it will continue to bless Israel, South Africa, and nations around the world. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
It is an amazing production, and they plan to take it around the world. And please do pray for the crisis in northeast Syria and for the Christians and other minorities caught in the crossfire, and for decision makers to make wise and godly decisions. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.